The story begins where the first season ended. Will, now the Lord of Beastwood, sat in his office, running his fingers across freshly made sheets of paper. Menel entered the room and teased him about stroking that paper like one would stroke a woman's skin. Will chuckled and replied with a cryptic smile, "It's the future." Will and Menel then take a walk outside. A chill hung in the air, a reminder of the approaching winter solstice. Menel shivered, while Will seemed deep in thought. As they walked through the bustling streets, Will reminisced aloud about how, 2 years ago, he had left the city of the dead and followed the river north, stumbling upon a sunken ruin. Now, after years of rebuilding, that place had transformed into Torchport, fondly called the Port of Light by its inhabitants. Menel asks what did Will mean by "paper is the future." Will explained that while the town currently thrives on the lumber trade, cutting down trees recklessly would eventually lead to ruin. Diversifying their trade with paper production would ensure long-term prosperity. Impressed, Menel remarked that Will sometimes thought like an elf, always considering the bigger picture and the years ahead. Even when he is on the front lines, risking your life, he is thinking about planting seeds for the future, he added. Menel then asks if Will is planning to attend the party Prince Ethelbald will be hosting in White Sails on the new year. Will agreed, and later they both attended the event. Soon after, the winter solstice arrived, bringing with it the first snowfall of the season. The morning after the solstice festival, Will and Bee strolled through the streets of the capital. Bee beamed as she recounted how much fun she had in festival and asked how feels greeting important people. Will admitted it was tough, but he managed thanks to everyone's help. As their walk continued, soon got deep in thought while observing the city. Bee nudged him gently. "What's wrong?" she asked. Will confessed that while the town had grown beautiful, Beastwoods and the surrounding forests remained in a poor state. Their work was far from over. Bee playfully thumped him on the head and scolded him for worrying too much. Her lightheartedness made Will smile, and he shared his solemn vow to Gracefeel, to be her sword to banish evil and her hand to save the suffering. Bee, touched by his words, encouraged him to focus on pleasing the goddess even more. Will offered to take her wherever she wanted. To his surprise, she led him to a secluded part of the woods, where an ancient academy stood, a school for sorcerers who studied the words of creation. "I want to find something here," Bee said determinedly. However, when she tried to rush in, Will stopped her, warning her about the dangerous maze alley magic guarding the grounds. If they forced their way in, it could bring disaster. Disheartened, Bee suggested they return, but Will, moved by her expression, proposed entering through the front door instead. Her spirits lifted, and they set off. However, they soon found themselves lost in snowy woods. Will cast a spell to clear their path, but ominous warnings carved into the trees urged them to turn back, and that even Gus in his youth couldn't pass through without his master's help. They follow another path and encountered a weeping tree that made Bee uneasy. Their journey led them to an old man sitting by a fire. Hay introduced themselves to him, but the man laughs and tells them he's the academy's groundskeeper and his name isn't worthy to be given to a paladin. Will is shocked that the old man knows him. The man asks them to sit. As Bee tells him that she wants to enter the academy, the old man asks her why, because she is neither a student nor a sorcerer. Bee tells him there's something she wishes to see, and Will explains that they want permission to enter for a few minutes. Old man says he hopes their permission is granted and offers them some food. He asked Will about his magic as he had seen the student's magic. Will believe he's being tested and refuses to use his magic as a mere sport as his master taught him. Then the old man asks him for help to pick some firewood for his fire. Will help pick the firewood and can use his magic but instead dries it by the fire. Old man thanks Will for the help and then them a question. He asks what magic they would want if great magic were to exist in the world. Bee excitedly tells him that she wishes for magic that can bring people happiness like Will's, which is why she likes him so much. Her candid response brought a warm smile to the old man's face. In a flash, they found themselves standing before the academy gates. The groundskeeper revealed himself as Hiram, both the professor and caretaker of the academy, and granted them entry. Inside, Hiram guided them through the academy's vast halls. As they walk through the academy, Bee screams when she sees a golem. Will is shocked and wonders what kind of magic must have gone into making it. Hiram leads them to the library. He granted them access to all areas except the forbidden shelves. Bee eagerly searched for a specific book afterwards. Saying goodbye to Hiram, they returned back. On their way back, Bee finally shared her reason for visiting the academy. She revealed that before becoming a traitor, she had traveled with a kind sorceress with golden hair and blue eyes. She was kind and helped people, and even in certain places she was regarded as a hero, but they parted ways and she died. She says by time people will forget her and even heroes, and she can't stand and let that happen. Bee says she will keep her alive through her songs because songs bring hope. Suddenly she wants to sing and will agree to accompany her. Menel and Will are fighting fighting with demons in the forest while heading to meet the Lord of Holly, who rules over the forest. As they fought their way forward, more demons appeared and defeated them all. Victorious but weary, they noticed blasphemous words scrawled into the bark of an ancient tree. Suddenly, a demon general emerged from the shadows, introducing himself. He summoned his minions, preparing for a fierce battle. A few days earlier, during the summer solstice, Will had observed snowdrops blooming unnaturally out of season. Prince Ethelbald had tasked him with uncovering the cause of this strange phenomenon. Together with Menel, Will ventured into the forest, where they encountered dead animals decaying unnaturally. Troubled by the sight, Will wondered what could have caused such a disturbance. Menel remarked that the forest had gone mad and explained its delicate balance. The forest was ruled by two ancient trees, the Lord of Oak and the Lord of Holly, twin spirits who shared royal authority by exchanging it during each solstice. This balance kept the seasons in harmony. Suspecting something had gone wrong in this exchange, they sought out the Lord of Oak. The ancient tree spirit confirmed their fears, explaining that the Lord of Holly had refused to accept the transfer of authority. Communication between the two was severed, leaving the forest in chaos. If the balance is not restored, the Lord of Oak warned, the spread of evil will consume the forest, leading to its collapse. Menel, determined to help, offered to take on the royal authority himself. Shocked, Will protested, but the Lord of Oak refused Menel's request, explaining that his human blood made him unsuitable. The power would destroy Menel's soul within a month. Undeterred, Menel insisted, pledging to atone for his past sins. Reluctantly, the Lord of Oak agreed and set Menel on a trial to earn the authority. Menel entered the forest alone and returned days later, triumphant. Back in the present, Menel wielded his newfound power to destroy the demon forces. While in a climactic battle, Will vanquished the demon general, clearing the path to the Lord of Holly. Once there, Menel transferred the royal authority, restoring balance to the forest. Grateful, the Lord of Holly revived the land, healing its corruption. The Lord of Holly informed Menel that, due to his bond with the Lord of Oak, he was destined to become the forest's ruler one day. Menel, shocked by this revelation, declared he had no such intention. The Lord of Holly explained that entrusting the royal authority meant inheriting its responsibilities. However, the transformation would not be immediate, and Menel could still choose to live and die as a human. Before they departed, the Lord of Holly issued a dire warning to Will. In the mountains to the west, where the rocks have turned red, the fire of a black calamity stirs. When it awakens, its flames may engulf the land. Despite the ominous prophecy, he assured them of a bountiful harvest in the coming season. Will and Menel returned to Prince Ethelbald to report their findings. Menel, frustrated by the prince's constant reliance on them, voiced his complaints, but Ethelbald dismissed them, reminding Menel that he was merely helping his friend. Bishop Bagley soon joined them, and Will relayed the Lord of Holly's warning. Ethelbald grew serious, recalling Will's earlier story about the demon High King sealed in the City of the Dead. Bagley questioned the reliability of the prophecy, but Menel defended the Lord of Holly's words, emphasizing the spirit's dominion over the forest. The group agreed to prioritize the threat, entrusting Will with the task. Excited by the prospect of action, Will accepted the responsibility. Ethelbald urged them to keep the information confidential. Later, over dinner, Will asked Bee about the Rust Mountains, mentioned by the Lord of Holly. Bee shared their history, explaining that 200 years ago, they were known as the Iron Mountains, home to the dwarves who worshipped Blaze, the god of fire and technology. The mountains were once part of a powerful nation, but during a great uprising, the dwarf king led his warriors into a battle against demons, but they all died in the battle. Afterward, the mountains fell to ruin, becoming infested with demons and earning the name Rust Mountains. Menel mentioned encountering dwarven refugees in Torchport, and Bee advised Will to speak with them for more information. As they walked through the forest, Will joked about Menel's future as the forest's lord. Menel, in turn, says maybe he will be his gravekeeper while he watches where his kids and grandkids end up. He says he has a lot of debts to Will that he can never repay, and Menel promises to always fight by Will's side until he fades. With the aid of Menel's fairies, the two returned to Torchport swiftly. Menel and Will arrived in Torchport and greeted by Tonio, who welcomed them warmly. They informed him of their intention to meet with the dwarves regarding the Rust Mountains. Curious about how the dwarven immigrants were faring, they were relieved to hear that despite initial apprehension from Torchport citizens, the refugees had settled in well over the past year. Tonio suggested they speak with Angar, the leader of the dwarves, to learn more. That night, Will had a vivid dream. He saw Gus and Blood, recounting tales of the spirits and the legendary bravery of dwarven warriors who sacrificed their lives for what they held dear. The dream lingered as he awoke for his morning training with Menel. While sparring, Will noticed someone watching them, a dwarf hiding clumsily in the bushes. Smiling, Will greeted him and invited him to join them. Menel, however, approached the dwarf aggressively, causing the frightened observer to flee. Will scolded Menel for his behavior, and Menel apologized, visibly remorseful. Later that day, Will goes to see Angar and notices the amount of respect he receives from the dwarfs. Will then meet Angar, and Angar introduced him to his granduncle, Grender, the leader of the immigrants. After exchanging formalities, Grender shared a somber truth. They had come to Torchport to die. Shocked, Will listened as Grender explained that he was one of the last survivors of the Iron Country, which had been reduced to ruins. Grender revealed his dream of reclaiming the Rust Mountains before his death, begging Will to let his people remain in a small corner of Torchport. Will, moved by his plea, took Grender's hands and assured him of his support. Grender broke down and began recounting the tragic tale of the Iron Country's fall. Grender spoke of Orvanger, the last king of the Iron Country. Orvanger, a peaceful ruler who preferred writing to warfare, oversaw a time of prosperity before disaster struck. One day, a demon emissary of the High King arrived, demanding their submission. When Orvanger refused and killed the emissary, the demon laughed and prophesied the coming of dragons. Despite the odds, Orvanger rallied his people, urging them to fight and die honorably in the mountains where their ancestors rested. Grender, who had witnessed it all, shared every painful detail with Will. Touched, Will reassured Grender that there was still hope. On his way back, Will encountered two men beating up the dwarf he had seen earlier. He quickly intervened and saved the young dwarf. When the dwarf regained consciousness, he introduced himself as Rue. Will apologized for the commotion to the innkeeper. She tells him about her sick father, and he heals the innkeeper's ailing father, who gratefully offers him a meal. They come out to see that Rue has fixed the door that was once broken. Will is impressed, but Rue talks himself down. Will encouraged him to be strong, not to undervalue himself. During their meal, when Will asks what was he doing there, Rue shyly reveals that he had been exploring while others were busy. Rue expressed admiration for Will, who told him about his meeting with Grender and Angar. Will advised him to be courageous and dependable. They returned to the dwarves' settlement, where Rue was warmly embraced by his kin. It was clear that Rue was cherished among them. Will introduced himself to them and apologized, keeping Rue with himself. Gelrise, a senior dwarf, stepped forward and introduced himself. After hearing Will's explanation for keeping Rue with him, Gelrise inquired about Will's intentions. Will revealed his desire to make Rue his vessel, sparking a mix of shock and outrage among the dwarves. Amidst the commotion, Will calmly asked Rue what he truly wanted. Rue, trembling but resolute, declared that he wanted to learn from Will and discover what it meant to be a warrior. He voiced his desire to face challenges head-on and become someone he could be proud of. Kneeling before Will, Rue swore his loyalty, offering himself as Will's vessel. Will accepted Rue's oath, while the other dwarves looked on in stunned silence. Gelrise eventually steps forward, acknowledging Rue's decision, and tells everyone that he will explain it to Grender later. He advised the young dwarf to be prepared to lay down his life for Will if necessary. Gelrise then entrusted Rue to Will's care, asking him to guide Rue wisely. With that, Will and Rue set off together. Later, we'll talk to Rue and discuss Rue's salary. Rue hesitated, expressing that he was simply happy to serve him. However, Will explained that appreciating loyalty and effort was important. He says, if he doesn't value his service properly, people might see him as someone who exploits those under him. He also mentioned that someone had once told him money was the best way to acknowledge a person's efforts. Rue reluctantly agreed. Will begins Rue's training. Rue struggled to keep up with Will during laps, his determination evident despite his exhaustion. Observing Rue's effort, Will found himself reflecting on how challenging it must have been for Blood, Mary, and Gus to raise him as a human child in their world. He vowed to do his best to guide Rue so that one day he could stand shoulder to shoulder with them. As the training shifted to physical conditioning, Will emphasized the importance of muscle strength in combat. He explains that muscle's brute force solves most problems, though he softened his approach when Rue looked overwhelmed. Will reassured him by explaining they would alternate training focus each day to keep things balanced. Will introduce Rue to Menel. Rue was nervous at first, but Menel's genuine apology for his earlier behavior helped calm him. Will then handed over Rue's training to Menel and left for a meeting. Later, Will visited the bar to check on the innkeeper and her father. There, he encountered Gelrise, who was assisting in preparations for an upcoming celebration. Curious, Will asked about Gelrise's role in the bar. Gelrise revealed he was a mercenary who occasionally hunted and was good with traps to help with provisions. As they walked together, they stopped at a bridge overlooking Torchport. Gelrise remarked on the beauty of the city, recounting how it had become a refuge for his people. Gelrise shared more of his past, describing how he had been too inexperienced to fight during the Iron Country's last stand. Haunted by the honor he never earned, Gelrise pleaded with Will to guide Rue well. Moved by his words, Will swore by the goddess to fulfill his promise. Back in his office, Will penned a letter to Bishop Bagley, seeking information and resources to investigate the Rust Mountains further. His thoughts drifted to the looming threat of Valasurka, the dragon, and the challenge it posed. He remembered his near-death battle with the echo of a god and felt a pang of doubt about his ability to survive such a powerful foe. However, the sounds of Rue and mental training nearby reassured him. Watching Rue improve with each passing session, Will felt pride and wondered if this was how Blood had felt while raising him. At dinner, Rue is weak from training but will encourage him to eat. During their conversation, Rue opened up about his noble background and the tragedy of losing his parents. His clan had shielded him from hardship, which left him feeling unprepared for real life. He shared how hearing songs about the paladin inspired him to seek a more meaningful existence. Will smiled and promised to be a good master, though he humbly admitted he couldn't teach Rue what courage truly was. Rue was shocked by Will's humility, but Will explained, courage isn't about beating opponents you aren't scared of. It's about what you do when faced with someone you believe you cannot defeat. One day, Raistov returns and meets Rue. He adjusted Rue's posture and offered practical advice, emphasizing that Rue must never tarnish Will's reputation. Raistov agrees to train Rue and Will asks him what he thinks courage is, but Raistov leaves the question unanswered. As winter approached, life in Torchport grew busy. A report of undead sightings reached Will, prompting him to investigate with Rue. He advised Rue to rely on more than just his eyes when assessing the situation. At the burial site, Rue was startled by the appearance of a gravekeeper. Will calmed him, noting that the person who reported the undead likely mistook an illusion for reality. Will then shared his perspective on Stagnate, the god of the undead, whom he described as kind for ensuring no life was wasted in death. On their way back, Will spotted a cave and decided to explore. Inside, they discovered a hidden passage leading to an ancient mold-covered interior. Will lit their way, and the two delved deeper, marveling at the eerie surroundings. Suddenly, a crow appeared before them, its piercing eyes unmistakable. It was Stagnate, the god of the undead, manifesting to confront them. Will and Rue are scared but get ready to fight. Stagnate stops them, telling them she can't win in this form and only send a herald, a messenger of God, to convey the message. Stagnate then apologized for her echo's rash behavior during their last encounter. She explains that newborn echoes are like infants. They act on raw emotion, and she is ashamed of what it did. Will says to her to stop joking around. He asks her what she wants. She then shows him a glimpse of the future, which makes Will completely scared. The fear and exhaustion etched on Will's face were unmistakable. Stagnate explains that what he saw was his future, where with the power of light he will rise to face the dragon, but it will not be enough. He will die. Stagnate tells him that if he wants to live, then he should not fight the dragon because he will die in vain. She tells him to ask Gracefeel if he doesn't believe her. Will gritted his teeth and asked, why is she telling him this? Stagnate tells him because as a hero she wouldn't want to see him fall to such a vulgar beast as Valasurka. She continued, explaining that Valasurka was no ordinary dragon. He is a relic of the god's era, a mercenary who fought for the demon armies during the Great Uprising. It was he who led the destruction of the Rust Mountains. He sleeps now only because his wounds are severe. Upon hearing this, they become shocked, and Rue tells her that he is a descendant of the Iron Country. Stagnate seems surprised but revealed more. She says that Rue's ancestor, King Orvanger, was no ordinary ruler. He was a hero who gouged out the eye of a dragon with his generational sword. Rue shouts, be proud of his heritage. Rue broke down in tears, overwhelmed with both grief and pride. Will, standing by, thought to himself how unexpected it was to see such kindness from a god like Stagnate, who distorted life and death with such ease. Stagnate tells Will that in time he can surpass Orvanger and defeat Valasurka, but this isn't the time. Their conversation was cut short as the earth beneath them trembled. Stagnate warns dragons to rest is growing shallow and chaos is imminent. The group left the burial site, only to encounter demons. They fought their way out, but one demon nearly struck Rue. Will saved him, pulling him to safety. A roar echoed through the woods, shaking the very ground. Stagnate warns them that something dangerous approaching and even will likely struggle a bit. A forest giant emerged, maddened by the dragon's roar. Normally gentle, it was now a towering threat. Rue froze in fear, but Will smiled, stepped forward, and subdued the giant in seconds. To Rue's astonishment, Will spoke the giant's language, warning it of the dragon's awakening. The giant, introducing himself as Ganger, thanked Will and promised to move to safer lands. Stagnate gave one final warning. 1,000 lives will be lost when the dragon rises. Think long and hard about your path, Paladin. Then, she vanished. Back in Torchport, the dragon's roar had caused chaos. Will dispatched adventurers to help displaced villagers, subdue rampaging demons, and treat the injured. He realized the dragon's awakening wouldn't just devastate beastwoods, but could also threaten Whitesales and beyond. A letter from Bishop Bagley arrived, humorously suggesting he could run away if he wanted. Will laughed bitterly at the irony. He prayed to Gracefeel, asking for guidance. As he prayed, Menel interrupted, informing him of a commotion. Outside, the dwarves had gathered, demanding to know Will's plan to slay the dragon. Rue tried to calm them, but Grendr and Gelrise grabbed him, shouting their desire to die fighting the dragon. Rue erupted, swiftly taking them down. He tells them dying isn't an option unless they are victorious, and that's what they taught him. He swears by Orvanger's name, Vindulfur, to reclaim the mountains and bring honor to his people. Manel and Will look from above and come down. Will announce his decision to slay the dragon to everyone. He asks Vindulfur to accompany him, and he agrees. Manel suggested they find a guide. Grendr offered, but Gelrise insisted on going in his stead. Raistov also volunteered. Will says they stand no chance against the dragon. He asks if they still want to fight, and they affirm it. Raistov also tells Anna about it, who is little scared, while Will talks to Bee about writing a song about the battle. Tino prepares Will's things and runs to inform him. Will and Bee talk a while about her song, and then Will asks a man for a favor. That night, Will sought Gracefeel's blessing. She assured him she didn't want him to die but acknowledged his determination. She granted her light, urging him to carry it with courage. The day of their departure arrived. Will woke with renewed determination, blessed by Gracefeel and supported by allies who believed in him. All the warriors, including Will, Menel, Rue, Raistov, and Gelrise, bid farewell to the people of Torchport. The townsfolk, teary-eyed yet proud, cheered and wished them luck. Antonio informs Will that he has prepared the thing he asked for. Menel said goodbye to Bee, who promised to immortalize their bravery in song. Raistov exchanged quiet words with Anna, who tried to mask her fear with a brave smile. Grendr shook hands with Gelrise, his eyes filled with respect. They promised to sing a song about heroes together. They leave their journey on a boat day via the river. One night Will stops and they get down and switch with a man named Marcus and his group. The others are puzzled until Will explains the plan Antonio has helped him devise. He tells them after their departure demons must have been on their trail, so Marcus and his group serve as doubles for all of them. He checked with the dwarfs too, and they decided to go upriver. Once they entered the tributary river, they would be able to reach the mountain from the other side, so while the demons are waiting at the front door, they would kick the back door and enter by force. Menel used his magic to conceal their boat and silence their movements. His fairies guided them through the misty waters. Will stood at the helm, observing their surroundings. Rue, however, looked nervous. Menel asks him to relax and tells him that's just how Will is sometimes. Rue shook his head. Rue tells them that if they go farther south than Torchport, there is a lakeside town that the High King took over, which is very dangerous, and even veteran adventurers are helpless amid the swirling mists of magic. Will turned to them with a small smile and tells grew up there. Menel was taken aback, as Will never told him. Will laughed apologetically. As they neared the town, an eerie maze-like fog enveloped the river. Will explained, "It is my grandfather's magic, a higher form of maze alley magic. It protected his home and the academy." The others marveled as Will used his own magic to clear a path, mirroring the lessons he had learned from Gus. But their awe turned to sorrow when they reached the town and found it in ruins. Will's heart raced as Menel urged him to go see Blood Mary and Gus. Without hesitation, Will sprinted to Mary and Blood's graves, paying his respects. Then he ran to the temple, calling for Gus. When he couldn't find him, fear gripped his heart. Just as despair set in, Gus appeared from the shadows and startled him. Will shout at Gus, and the first thing he asked him is if he is making a lot of money. Will grinned and shared his achievements, telling him that now he is a renowned paladin and lord of a town. But Gus teased him relentlessly, especially when Will revealed he had only met men and no romantic prospects. The group later joins and convenes with Gus, explaining their mission to slay Valisurka. Gus, shocked by the magnitude of the challenge, advised flexibility in their strategy. He wants them to not rely on one idea. Gus welcomes them and asks them to feel at home while they are there. Gelrise reintroduced himself, thanking Gus for saving him in the past. Will go into his room and remember all the memories of himself and the three undead and smiles. Menel comes in and talks about how Gus directed him to the room, and it seemed as if he knew everything about him. Will laugh about it and talk about how amazing Gus is. Later he meets Gus when he is cleaning and inquires about Valisurka. They go outside for a walk and Gus tells him about the dragon. He says it was easier for dragons of old to fly around easily because of the magic, and if it's a battle of magic, Valisurka will win. Will says that is probably why Stagnate warned him against fighting the dragon. They then talk about the god of the undead, and Gus says he is grateful for the chance to have raised Will with Mary and Blood. Gus tells him he will die, but Will says that is better than letting the dragon roam free. Gus, however, refused to let Will die. He directed them to the secret armory and insisted they refurbish the equipment, offering the remnants of weapons and equipment used by the comrades who once battled the High King. Using his magic, Gus revealed a hidden door leading to an armory. The group selected their weapons. Restov, however, requested a unique enchantment for his sword to ensure its durability. Will reflected on the significance of the weapons and prayed for their previous owner's peace. As they prepared to leave, Will asked Gus for permission to bring Bee to the town after the battle. Gus immediately assumed Bee was someone special to Will, only to be deflated when Will clarified she was just a friend. Gus's exaggerated disappointment left Will chuckling. Will handed a right-hand stiletto dagger to Rue, explaining that it had once belonged to his father. Though Rue hesitated, Will insisted, saying, "His father has already given me so much. This dagger is better off with you." Grateful, Rue accepted the gift. Later, while the others went to search for food, Will and Rue stayed behind to clean their camp. As they worked, Rue confessed his feelings about his royal lineage, expressing a wish that he had been born into a simpler family, like one that owned a workshop. Will laughed softly, admitting that if their roles were reversed, he'd probably wish to be royalty. Rue, troubled, admitted he felt as though he'd dragged Will into his own problems. Will tells Rue that he knows what he is getting into. If he didn't fight, he wouldn't be able to face his parents, Gus, or even myself. He wants to live my life in a way he can be proud of, so when he returns to the goddess, he can tell her he gave it my all. That's why he won't run from the dragon. And truthfully, it's because of Ryu that he is making this decision, and thanks Rue. Touched, Rue swore to Will that no matter what happens, he'll regret nothing. Will says he is counting on him. Menel returned with a deer he'd hunted. While eating, he teased Restov and Gelrise for failing to catch any fish. That night, Will dreamt of Mary. In his dream, she asked if he was afraid of her, and he admitted he was still adjusting to the sight of humans. Mary reassured him that he would grow accustomed to it in time. Then blood appeared, warning Will that valor could be both a strength and a curse. There will be times when he can't give up, even if it means his own death. Blood says he taught him how to fight because it's what he knows. If that ever causes Will pain, feel free to hate him. Will firmly replied, there's no way he could ever hate him. The next day, Will visited the graves of Mary and Blood. Standing before them, he expressed gratitude for the friends he had made and the strength he'd gained. Will says, it's tough without them, recalling their parting words. As he turned to leave, he found Gus waiting nearby. Gus warned him about Valisirka, describing the dragon as a war-hardened beast that thrived in chaos. Gus tells Will is probably the only one who poses a real threat to it. When Will confessed he didn't feel strong enough, Gus suggested running away, but Will dismissed the idea, saying it was meaningless to do nothing. Gus cautioned that this was their best chance to strike before Valisirka fully healed and awakened. Gus deeply wishes to join them but says he would be no use. Will tell him it's okay, he can wait with Mary and Blood. The group resumed their journey, navigating upriver. Gelrise, studying the map, suggested taking a tributary to avoid known dangers. Menel summoned sylphs to guide their path and cast spells to mask their presence. As they journeyed, Will asked Gelrise if he knew what lay ahead. Gelrise mentioned the ancient elven forest of Lothdor, which had a fraught history with the Iron Country due to conflicts over logging. Menel shared a similar story from his homeland, and Gelrise lamented how these tensions sometimes escalated into violence, though the elves' song and spirit arts had left a lasting impression. Their conversation was interrupted when they entered an area shrouded in swirling mist. Rue called out, but no one answered. Manel tells them the scenery looks familiar and will ask if it's words of taboo. Manel tells them if elves really secluded themselves in the forest, no one could do anything, so those demons used the words of taboo to rot the entire forest. Menel suggests destroying all the demons. Determined, the group prepared for battle as serpents emerged from the water. Will fell into the river during the fight but managed to defeat the serpents. Restov pointed out that the river seemed to have swallowed part of the forest. Exploring further, they found architecture partially submerged. Will ask Gelrise if he sees anything familiar. He tells him he can't be sure, but the style of architecture, it's definitely elven, and shows them where they are on the map. Menel tells them the Fae around here are weakened and he can't call the forest spirits, but he could use his forest powers. Restov says they probably shouldn't, so they wouldn't attract demons. The group pressed on cautiously. They encounter the dead and will praise to Gracefield to guide the lost souls in the water to peace. The goddess appeared, pointing them to the correct path. Menel then summoned the Maiden of Water to bless their journey, allowing them to glide swiftly over the river's surface. Soon, they encountered a Hydra attacking a young girl. Menel rushed to her aid while the rest of the group engaged the Hydra. After defeating the creature, Menel urged Will to heal the girl. Though initially hesitant, fearing his prayer might fail if the girl resisted. The girl eventually accepted his help, and Will's prayer restored her health. Menel woke the girl by pressing a bottle against her lips. Startled, she jerked away in anger, demanding an explanation. Menel grinned mischievously and claimed he had kissed her. Flustered and furious, she lashed out, but Menel quickly revealed it was just a bottle of wine. Apologizing for his abruptness, he introduced himself. The girl, calming down, introduced herself as Dinelind and expressed her gratitude to the group for saving her life. She also formally thanked Will after confirming he was their leader. Menel, attempting to lighten the mood, requested their meeting be blessed. Dinelind teased him, saying he only wanted her blessing so he could speak normally. Menel admitted that elven etiquette wasn't exactly his strength. As they exchanged introductions, the group revealed their intention to slay the dragon. Dinelind's eyes widened in shock. "Just the 5 of you?" she asked incredulously. They nodded, with Will acknowledging how reckless it sounded but emphasizing they had no other choice. When Will asked why she was fighting a hydra alone, Dinelind hesitated before saying it was a long story. Menel, sensing her unease, suggested they eat first. To comfort her, they offered her some of their meat. Gelrise, recalling 11 dietary habits, asked if she was okay with eating meat. Dinelind explained that while elves generally avoided meat, exceptions were made for those who had undergone intense spiritual training. When Menel pointed out her emaciated appearance, she admitted she hadn't eaten in days, explaining that elves pride themselves on not abandoning the weak, even at their own expense. Moved by her resolve, Will asked if she could lead them to her village. Dinelind agreed and guided them deeper into the forest. As the surroundings grew darker, Menel noted that something beyond demon magic was affecting the area. Dinelind revealed it was the miasma of the evil dragon, which defiled the forest year by year like necrosis. Gelrise questioned how the dragon's corruption reached so far from the mountains, and Dinelind explained that the dragon's influence spread through underground tunnels. When they arrived at Dinelind's village, they found it in a pitiful state. The villagers were frail, sick, and despondent, their air, water, and food poisoned by the weakened powers of the Fae. Dinelind solemnly welcomed them to Lothdor. Will immediately offered to help, asking for all the sick villagers to gather in one place. Using his divine powers, he healed them, bringing joy and hope back to the village. Exhausted from his efforts, Will rested. That night, Stagnate in the form of a crow shows up. She urges him to abandon his mission, warning him of certain death if he faces the dragon. When Will refused, Stagnate tempted him with an offer to become her right-hand man, defeat the dragon, and conquer the world. Will once again declined, reaffirming his role as her enemy but expressing respect for her. Stagnate and frustrated, departed, ominously predicting his death. The next morning, Will awoke to Dinelind and Menel arguing heatedly. He teased them, calling it a lover's quarrel. Both vehemently denied his accusation, with Menel saying he only complimented Dinelind out of good manners. Dinelind retorted angrily, calling him an ecto-keiko nagamo moi while he playfully referred to her as an economic nag. With their path clear, Menel and Will decided to confront the demon beasts and restore the forest's lord. Dinelind objected, saying Will had already done enough for them. She explained that the territory belonged to demons and was extremely dangerous. However, the group's resolve could not be shaken. Accompanied by Dinelind and some of Lothdor's warriors, they ventured deeper into the forest to confront the demon beasts that have claimed the Lord of the Forest's throne as their own. Engaging in fierce combat, they slayed numerous beasts, but their victory was short-lived when they discovered a tree filled with demon beast eggs. Menel stepped forward, using his powers to purify the tree and cleanse the forest of its corruption. Dinelind, watching in awe, was impressed by his strength. As they rested, Dinelind questioned Will's resolve to face the dragon. Will assured her that ignoring the threat would only lead to greater suffering. Determined, he asked to be shown the nearest underground tunnel leading to the Rust Mountains, where the dragon resided. Although Dinelind offered to accompany them, Will declined, concerned they would slow the group down. With a heavy heart, Dinelind bid them farewell. At the west gate, the entrance to the Iron Country, Rue knocked, and the gate creaked open, granting them passage. As they stepped through, Dinelind offered a prayer for their safety. The group moved cautiously through the dark, oppressive tunnels. Will voiced his unease, remarking on how much he disliked spending time in such a treacherous environment. Rue agreed, saying that even with Will's anti-poison spell, the atmosphere felt heavy and nasty. The poor visibility added to the danger of potential enemy encounters and hidden traps. Will warned them to stay vigilant, reminding everyone that they were up against demons, some of which could crawl on walls or take to the air. As they advanced, the group decided to take short breaks and post guards occasionally, knowing that danger could strike at any moment. Menel, their ever-watchful guardian, spotted a concealed trap ahead and deftly disarmed it. They pressed onward, nerves frayed and senses heightened for any sign of an ambush. Will broke the tension with a light-hearted remark about their surprisingly uneventful journey so far, noting the absence of demon attacks. Menel suggested that the demons might be amassing in the Hall of Stone, preparing for a coordinated ambush. Suddenly, his sharp ears picked up a strange noise echoing through the tunnel. The group tensed, readying themselves for battle. However, their apprehension turned to relief when the source of the noise emerged. An army of spectral skeletons. The skeletons, their ancient bones rattling with an eerie resonance, recognized Gelrise among the group. Rue stepped forward and shared the grim news of the Iron Kingdom's fall, including the demise of its warriors and king. He pledged to restore the kingdom and urged the skeletons to rest. With their duty fulfilled, the spectral army faded away into the afterlife, leaving the group in solemn reflection. Pressing forward, they encountered demons lurking in the shadows. The group fought desperately, putting their lives on the line to overcome the creatures. After a grueling series of battles, they finally reached their destination, the hallowed Hall of Light. Inside, a demon sat upon the throne, exuding malice and hostility. Rue stepped forward and requested permission to reclaim the throne by fighting the demon. Will, confident in Rue's abilities, granted his permission. Menel hesitated, voicing concerns about Rue's readiness to face such a powerful foe. He warned Will that adhering too rigidly to warrior codes could cost Rue dearly. Will reassured Menel, expressing his trust in Rue's strength and skill. However, he promised to intervene if the situation became dire. Rue engaged the demon in a fierce duel, his movements showcasing precision and strategy. Menel, torn between worry and trust, glanced repeatedly at Will, seeking reassurance. As Rue fought, a horde of demons flooded into the hall. The rest of the group sprang into action, battling valiantly against the overwhelming numbers. Despite being outnumbered, they pushed their limits and emerged victorious, vanquishing every last demon. Meanwhile, Rue triumphed over the demon on the throne, securing the hall. With the battle over, Will retrieved the crown of the throne and placed it upon Rue's head, a symbolic gesture of victory and recognition of Rue's abilities. However, Rue humbly stated he would accept the crown only after restoring the Iron Kingdom. Their respite was short-lived. The body of the defeated demon was nowhere to be found. Will's sharp intuition warned him that the demon might be heading for the Great Cavern, likely seeking aid from the dragon. The thickening miasma in the air confirmed his suspicions. The group pressed on, venturing deeper into the oppressive darkness. Suddenly, they stumbled upon a horrific scene. Something or someone had killed the fleeing demon. As they looked ahead, a massive figure loomed before them. Their hearts sank in terror as they realized the truth. Standing in front of them was the evil dragon, its immense form dominating the cavern. It greeted them in a deep, resonant voice, welcoming them to what it called its bedchamber. The group braced themselves, knowing that their greatest challenge lay directly ahead. The mighty dragon asks their names, but fear paralyzed them. Even Will, usually their pillar of strength, felt his legs trembling. His throat was dry, his mind blank, and he couldn't muster the courage to speak. Suddenly, Mary's words echoed in his mind, saying denying his fear won't make it disappear. Courage begins with accepting it. Inspired by her teachings, Will forced himself to breathe deeply and steady his shaking hands. Summoning his resolve with as much confidence as he could muster, he asks the dragon to tell his name first. The dragon introduces himself as the great dragon Veliserica, the sickle of the gods, born from the dying embers of a star, wielding eternal life, and ruling over miasma and sulfur. Will gathered his courage and introduced himself as the son of heroes and disciple of the light, the Faraway Paladin, William G. Merryblood. Veliserica reveals that he knew the old heroes, and to everyone's surprise, he made an unexpected offer. Veliserica offers to sever Will. Veliserica says he has no problem serving Will, and Will can use his powers as he sees fit. Will was stunned. For a fleeting moment, the idea of wielding such power tempted him. Yet his instincts urged caution. Something about the dragon's offer felt wrong. Veliserica gave him two options: to accept and usher in peace or refuse and die in battle. The oppressive aura weighed on Will, clouding his thoughts. His heart raced, his mind screamed for guidance, and he silently pleaded for help. Suddenly, a familiar warmth enveloped him, the presence of the goddess of light. Her silent reassurance reminded him that she was always by his side. Will's resolve crystallized. Standing tall, he refuses to accept Veliserica's demands. Will offer Veliserica to change its way or fight them. Will tell Veliserica if he can change his ways, and will swear by the name of the goddess of light to protect him, or he can fight them and face judgment. Veliserica flapped its colossal wings, sending a gale through the chamber, praising Will for solving the dragon's riddle. The dragon acknowledges Will as a true hero but refuses to accept Will's offer and chooses to fight. The dragon tells them he can't change his ways because his nature is destruction and killing. With that, the battle began. Will lunged forward, spear in hand, but Veliserica's scales proved impenetrable, just as Gus had warned that even blood would struggle to make a cut. Remembering Gus's advice to exploit old wounds, Will focused all his strength on a precise strike, managing to make a cut. The dragon also proves to be a formidable adversary, shrugging off Will's blows with ease. One by one, the others joined the fray. Their coordinated attacks pushed Veliserica back, cornering the beast. Will unleashed his most powerful spell, chaining the dragon with magic and preparing his trump card, a devastating light-based incantation. The spell struck true, and Veliserica vanished in a blinding explosion of light. For a brief moment, they believed they had won. Exhausted and battered, the group collapsed in relief. But Will felt no satisfaction. The victory felt hollow, too sudden. A chill ran down his spine as a wind stirred from deeper within the cavern. Before he can warn the others, a sudden storm blows them away, and to their shock, the dragon reappears. Revealing its true nature, it is transformed. Will realize it's possible for a dragon to transform, and that is how it enters the Iron Country. His heart sinks as the dragon survives his trump card and realizes its futility even if he used any other magic. He realizes the dragon cannot be defeated. It has faced every adversary and prevailed on every battlefield, constantly living from God's era. Despite their best efforts, they stand before an opponent who has overcome every challenge thrown its way, leaving them to confront the grim reality of their situation. The battle had taken a devastating toll. Will's companions fell unconscious, leaving him the last one standing before the mighty dragon Veliserica. The dragon, radiating its overwhelming power, commended Will for lasting this long. Its golden eyes gleamed with malice as it made a chilling proposition. It offered Will the chance to serve under it. If he refused, the dragon promised to burn his friends, destroying not only their bodies but also their souls. Knowing full well that a warrior like Will would never sacrifice his companions, Veliserica seemed to revel in watching Will's reaction, savoring his torment. When Will remained resolute, the dragon offered him another way out, telling that Will can avoid all of this easily by killing himself, and his friends will be spared. As Will serve the goddess of light, she will guide him to infinite possibilities in new worlds by severing his own head. The dragon asks Will to choose peace over death by my flames. Despite the overwhelming pressure, Will refused to waver. Cornered and facing impossible odds, he declared with unwavering resolve that he would never yield to the dragon's demands. The dragon then tells that his friends will die. Will says that they have come prepared for the worst and will do what is necessary. Even in the face of certain death, he would fight until his last breath. With a roar of defiance, Will launched his attack, but his blows barely scratched the dragon's scales. His spear, his trusted weapon, shattered in the fray, leaving him no choice but to rely on the cursed demon blade. Betting everything on this weapon, he rushed forward. However, Veliserica, already aware of the blade's effects and its weaknesses, thwarted his every attempt to get close. The dragon makes sure that Will never get close and prepared for the attack. The dragon unleashes a devastating breath of fire. Just as Will braced for the end, a radiant herald from the goddess of light descended, shielding him from the deadly flames. Veliserica sneered at the intervention. A single herald? Weak and fleeting. One god cannot change anything. With relentless force, the dragon shattered the divine shield and sent Will hurtling across the battlefield. Yet, even then, it acknowledged his tenacity and skill and commended him for putting up a valiant fight. The dragon growled, preparing to unleash a final, fiery assault. Before the flames could consume him, an unexpected voice echoed through the cavern. Stagnate, the goddess of death, appeared, interrupting Veliserica's deadly attack. Stopping him to kill Will, she declared coolly, "Will's her enemy." Stagnate tells one god can't change anything, then what will happen if two gods intervene? The dragon insults her and calls Paladin a lady killer because two goddesses rush to his side when he is in peril. The dragon asks Stagnate what type of protection she will give to Will. Stagnate smirked and said she not giving any protection to him because he is her enemy. The dragon is confused. Then she reminds the dragon where he stands, on the grounds of the Iron Country, where brave dwarven warriors fought their final stand. She summoned an army of undead, the fallen Darwan soldiers, led by Ru's grandfather King Arvanger himself. Ru's grandfather, a stalwart dwarf, approached Will with a solemn expression, offering Will a legendary sword, passed down through generations. The king said, "Take this, Paladin, and protect my grandson." Will accepted the sword with gratitude and swore to safeguard Ru. Before disappearing, Arvanger took a moment to speak with Ru, who vowed to reclaim his homeland, igniting a spark of hope in the fallen king. For those spirits unable to maintain their forms, Gracefeel, the goddess of light, intervened, offered to guide them afterward and allowed them to fulfill their mission by merging them with Will and his companions. Their essence strengthened the group, imbuing them with renewed power and resolve. Now, bolstered by divine reinforcements and armed with a blade of legend, Will stood tall once more. Together, as heroes of both the living and the dead, they prepared to face Velaserica once again. The dragon stood tall and mighty, its fiery gaze locked on the party as it issued a deadly threat to end them all. Undaunted, Will gripped his newly acquired dwarven sword and, with a battle cry, rushed forward. His blade struck true, carving into the dragon's mighty scales. As the beast reeled, immobilized for a moment, Manel, Raistov, and the others, alongside the undead Darwan soldiers, pressed the attack. Will managed to sever one of the dragon's claws, forcing it to roar in agony. Gelrise and Rue led the undead forces with determination, their coordination bringing chaos to the dragon's defenses. Gelrise, sword raised high, rallied their spectral comrades to strike relentlessly. Each blow shattered the dragon's scales, cracking them and drawing cries of anguish from the once imposing beast. As the onslaught intensified, the dragon, feeling cornered, began to prepare its most dangerous attack, a devastating breath of fire. Sensing the dire threat, Will surged forward, ignoring the searing heat emanating from the dragon. His resolve unwavering, he leaped into the maw of the beast just as it unleashed its breath. He thrusts his blade deeper into the dragon's throat. As the sword penetrates the dragon's flesh, a torrent of flames erupts from its throat, engulfing Will in a torrent of scorching fire. His armor glowed red-hot, his skin seared, and pain racked his body. Will thinks this the end for him yet. The goddess of light's voice resonated in his mind, urging him to fulfill his promise. Summoning the last vestiges of his strength, Will gripped his demon blade. With a final, decisive thrust, he plunged the sword deep into the dragon's throat, piercing its heart. The beast let out a thunderous roar as its massive body collapsed in a smoldering heap. Will fell unconscious amidst the carnage. When Will awoke, his companions surrounded him, their faces a mixture of relief and concern. He glanced at the lifeless form of Velaserica, realizing they had emerged victorious. Gratitude filled his heart as he turned to the undead Darwan warriors. Will thanked them for their unwavering loyalty and courage. Rue assured the warriors that their duty was fulfilled and that they could now rest in peace. Slowly, the spectral soldiers began to fade, their spirits finding solace at last. As the battle's toll settled in, Will noticed his body felt different, stronger, harder, stagnate. The goddess of death revealed the truth. Because he used a demon blade to kill Velaserica and the dragon's flames had burnt his body and soul, tempering him, and his blood had hardened, and Velaserica's dragon factor directly interwoven its power with his body. Ordinary blades would no longer cut him, and weak magic would feel like a gentle breeze. She warned him to wield his newfound strength wisely, cautioning against arrogance. Will is now indebted to her since he helped slay the dragon. She prefers it and thinks it's more suitable for him. She asks him to marry her if she ever creates a female echo, making Greg feel jealous. Before fading away, she revealed her true face, confessing her love for him despite his devotion to her sister, the goddess of light. The goddess of light granted the group a wish. Rue stepped forward, asking her to expel the evil miasma from the dwarf lands. The party agreed, and with her purification and blessing, the Iron Country began its path to renewal. Packing their spoils, including the dragon's severed head, they made their way back. At the gates of the Iron Country, Dine Lind and her forces greeted them, relieved at their return. She joined them in celebrating their victory with a feast, and Will offered the dragon's horde to help rebuild the dwarven city. The group eventually returned to Gus, who was astonished to see them alive. Rue tried to return the weapon Gus had lent him, but Gus insisted he keep it. Similarly, Will offered the dwarven sword back to Rue, but Rue urged him to keep it as a symbol of the bond between their peoples. Will and Gus then visited the graves of Mary and Blood, thanking them for their guidance. They returned to their village, greeted with joy and celebration. Villagers marveled at the dragon's head as proof of their feat, be rushed to embrace Will, relieved to see everyone alive, and eagerly declared her intent to write a song about their adventures. Rue shared stories of the Iron Country's revival, while Anna rejoiced at Raistov's safe return. In the end, the next day, the village threw a grand celebration. Under the starry sky, they feasted, danced, and laughed as we sang a song of their victory.
Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more videos like this. If you have any suggestions or questions, feel free to leave a comment below. Until next time, take care.